Hey there everyone, so here we are back on the bench, kicking off with the first kit of the project. So we'll be starting off with the RAF Hawk T.1 in Red Arrow livery, and making sure that I pull out the right set of spool. Everything's going to come out. It's okay, we can put things back. We'll have a look at the aftermarket stuff later. Right now we want to have a look at the sprues. We'll have a look at the box as well. So yeah, 2015 boxing combination set with the Red Arrows who originally flew the Fallen Nat, and then aerobatics teams became centralised around the Red Arrow team, and the Nat then the Hawk. What else is there? Yeah, 50th display season with our lovely liveries just picked out with that nice white glow to differentiate the aircraft from the Airfix red. Flying hours, must remember to collect those. Yeah, not much else on the sides. Oh, what about the back? I just shake everything up. Yep, information on the aircraft, same as always, along with our flight details. So, yeah. So, the original kit was, the original moulds were made in 2003, with a few new parts being released over the years, and new decal schemes. Let's compliment the aircraft. Obviously already been in here, so we'll have a look at the clear sprue first. Parts of the Martin Baker seats had already come loose, which is why they're in here. So not entirely dissimilar to the 172nd, we've got a nice, quite thick, clear canopy. Is that a crack, or is that a? It's like a mould deformity, a bit of a. It appears to be a crack. Just there. But the clear parts themselves are quite, slightly brittle but sturdy. Clear part again for the arch, similar to the 1/72 scale, and we can model this with the canopy up. So we've got the forward part of the canopy to fix the fuselage, and then the main part which can be modelled up or down. Various clear parts for our navigation lights, wingtips, the front of the nose, tail lights, fuselage top, etc., and so on. So yeah, I'll be perfectly honest, it's not a particularly nice bit of clear plastic, but it'll do the job. I mean, up close the visual distortion isn't that bad, so having it over the modelled cockpit and with it being open as well, it's not going to be that much of an issue. Just make sure it's painted nicely. So that's our clear sprue. So the two main buckets for the Martin Baker's ejection seats have taken themselves off the sprue. So that's those. We have a pair of sprues with the fuselage half and the tank half, display tank halves, along with individually detailed control consoles for the cockpit, as well as various panels. So we've got, I'm not sure what these panels are at the moment, have to have another look. Looking at the plastic itself, so we'll do It's another great big piece of Airfix grey plastic with that slightly mottled finish that we're all used to by now. Moulding itself seems to be nice and straight. It's a complicated shaped part, so not going to see much distortion and stuff like this. What's interesting is where there were guide pegs on the 1/72 scale for where the nacelle part's attached, there aren't any here. There's just a flat part for it to join onto. That could help, we'll see later on in the build, could help with the seam line for where the nacelle attaches actually being the seam line rather than a gap that'll need filling. Smoke tank moulded in halves again, similarly to the 1/72 scale. Some nice detailing on the inside of the cockpit sides that we'll be able to pick out, as well as some detail in what's going to be the wheel bay just here. Not much more detail, although how much detail is there to add is another question compared to the 1/72, but the panel lines are quite thick, so you can get a bit reckless with the paint. But yeah, not great, not bad for this scale, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say. Actually, saying that, as we move forward onto the nose, it gets a bit lumpy and bumpy. So if we just it's not as nice and smooth as the rest. How about, so it doesn't seem to be the similar problem with the second half. Interestingly, at this scale as well, the tail is moulded in two halves rather than being moulded whole on one sprue. Just an observation. Pisset tube fixing, nav light fixing, nice flat part there for the engine intake. Same details present again. Not much warp or flash for what, 18-year-old moulds. Although I will say that the gating on the sprue, particularly for the wings, as we'll see in a bit, is quite clumsy, quite exaggerated. So onto sprue. It does appear to be okay, so it appears that these older kits don't have individually labelled or numbered sprues. That's fine, all the parts are individually numbered. So we've got our rear oleos and undercarriage along with the wheels. So what's weird with these wheels, so where the mould line joins, there's quite a thick middle to the wheels. Not particularly well moulded. Inside of the engine bucket, the exhaust, we've got some ribbing and detailing that's all out of focus. There we go. Just make it out in the shadows there. Again, tailerons, all moulded in one piece with some panel lining. Interestingly, there are some rough and smooth bits. I don't know if it's an excessive release compound or something for artifact from the moulds themselves. But yeah, just we've got this one shiny patch randomly. It might just be where it's been stored and moved around for so much. Cockpit parts and various parts for the smoke machines, the air brake, and other parts that I can't identify. These might be weapon pylons off the top of my head. Yeah, nice details, bog standard plastic. No, again, no real signs of flashing or any bad examples of mould lines. Nothing that can't be taken away with the back of a scalpel or a seam line remover. So this is a full hawk moulding, so we do have drop tanks and fuel tanks. we can remove the elevators and flaps and model those individually. So these parts here are for that, and you can have a positionable control surface actuators is the word I'm looking for, that the fins that you see on the underside of the wing, to position those as you like. So won't be using these, we'll be using these. Not a huge amount of detail, but again they're just drop tanks. Some detail on the actuators and lots of flat plastic with a few keys and guides for glue. So here we have our nacelle intakes. We have the fuselage to the rear of the cockpit. We've got the cockpit bucket with our front and rear seats and some nice moulded detail, but I'm probably going to have to sand away given the kits that I've got, or replace entirely, we'll see. Very nicely moulded pair of parts, a lot of detail actually, so you can actually, come on, focus, there we go, you can actually see things like the visor individually moulded onto the helmet, and then the helmet seam where it sits on the pilot's head. And what's really impressive is there's almost no, so looking at them both, I can only really see a seam line around the back of this guy's shoulder where the mould separates, and a little bit on one of his trouser legs. That's for an old kit, an old mould, old tooling, that's some really subtle, beautiful work. And then we've got their arms as well, various parts for undercarriage, for aerials, parts I'm not entirely sure the provenance or use of at the moment. So it's the first time that I've seen ejector pin marks that are going to be problematic. So they're on the inside of the engine intakes here. So a bit of sprue goo to help get shift of those, and now I'm going to be really paranoid and go back and have a look at the fuselage again. No, actually, no, the actual cockpit detailing itself, it appears to be clear, with the ejector pin marks being behind the bulkhead that we'll be gluing to. Well considered, nice job. Let's have another look at the other one. Same again, loads of ejector pin marks, but not anywhere that matters. Very good, very clever Airfix, well done. So yeah, these are the only ones that appear to be problematic so far. With that nice compound curve on the outer part of each nacelle where it joins onto the forward root of the wings. This is the one sprue out of the lot that I really feel let down by, aside from the fact that I'm not going to be using half of it with the weapons. So the gates, presumably because the piece itself is so thin I can flex it with my fingers, the gates on here are ridiculously thick. Again, the undercarriage bays are moulded very shallow, so you wouldn't be able to model the undercarriage in like a semi-deployed position or with the doors open. But that's one of the kits, that's one of the aftermarket parts that I'll be exploring, so we'll be removing these parts and fitting full-size undercarriage bays, which would be a first for me. And again, you've got our little notches for our nav light inserts. And again, the wings are a pretty standard Airfix approach, with the upper and lower halves sandwiching together to form a wing with a seam along the front. And yeah, so these parts can be cut and removed, so you can use the positionable mouldings, and you've got your slots for your actuators to then model those parts onto. These I think are the undercarriage part of the undercarriage bay doors along with these, but again these will be replaced with aftermarket parts. So yeah, it's this is the first kit of this scale that I've had a proper look at, and thinking about scaling and thickness I can understand why the wings are so thin, but maybe there's another way to approach it. And we've got detail on both sides of this mould, for example, but only on one side of the other, so there's obviously quite anticipating how they approach the wings on newer kits. But yeah, there are some improvements over the 1/72. There are a lot of things that are the same, and in some cases disappointingly so, the undercarriage bays being a prime example. The engine nacelle intakes being another. But having said that, and having had a bad experience on the previous kit, the changes in how they approach that with this kit might be the same. Might be different, sorry, resulting in me being pleasantly surprised. Just sensors again as well, so we've got the forward undercarriage wheel here with that weird mould line rib all the way around again. Missed that the first time round. Yeah, there's a few, there are definitely more parts and more detail in the parts, especially the actuators, the posable flaps and fins. There's each of the ejector seats in this kit consist of multiple components as opposed to being one piece that gets glued in. The cockpit tub itself has a lot of detail, but we'll be detailing up that with photo etch and potentially other detailing media. Aftermarket pisset tube, the external detailing for the landing gear and control surfaces as well. I'd give it, so having looked at it, it's an 8 or a 9 for most of it. The wings at the moment, I haven't put them together, but just looking at how the wings are, I'd maybe put them down as a 6 or 7. They're nice, they're detailed, there's no flash despite it being a slightly more senior moulding. I know there are much older kits out there still in circulation, but yeah, I'm not happy with how the material of the wings flexes, but we'll see how it looks once it's put together. So that's what you get in a 1/48 BAE T.1 Hawk Red Arrow plastic bag, and what we'll have a look at next are the aftermarket parts that I'll be using on the kit. So as you can see, I'm not taking things easy on myself. We're getting in quite deep quite quickly. So first thing we're going to look at, so we've got these wonderful Kitsworld 3D printed decals, and we'll, yeah, can't trust autofocus with anything nowadays. Let's, so yeah, lovely full colour decals that you can layer up with different instrumentation, as well as you've got the side panel parts as well, and all lovely little details and options there. So I'll be using my photo references to make sure that I build all this up properly. There'll be a bit of sanding of some of the cockpit parts to make sure they're nice and smooth to receive these after they've been painted. But yeah, that's going inside the cockpit, which is why I'm so keen to model it in the open position, just to really show it off. Once again, we have masters in G Master Master Mould pisset tube. Again, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind whatsoever that I will end up turning this into a banana several times, so you've all got that to look forward to. Curiously, it's definitely not just a third larger than the one from the 172 Hawk, but I guess there are limits to the scaling when you manufacture these. What do we have now? Ah, yes. So we have a full set of external details from Czech Master Kit, including sets of the actuators, a replacement mould for the inside of the air brake, along with a replacement air brake part. Haven't had these out and tidied these up yet, so have to double away and get that done. Replacement mouldings, so very subtle keying there for the flaps. Replacement rudder with a much nicer scale trailing edge. Ah yes, that's the replacement actuator for inside the air brake. These, I believe, are the shims. So these shims fit inside the trailing edge of the wing once you've removed the moulded flaps. Again, replacement parts for the flaps. Quite a lot of cleaning up to do on these, but that's all part of the learning experience. And finally, a replacement exhaust. And I can't see inside there, just there we go, just move the light around a bit. Some nice moulded detail in there. So this is going to be interesting because I have to increase the gauge of the hole that the bucket fits in to fit this. So I'm going to try and make a nice neat round hole into a larger nice neat round hole rather than a vaguely round mess, which I've not really had to do before, so that's going to be interesting. As far as cleanup goes on the resin parts, I'll be cleaning these once I've finished tidying them up and taking them off their blocks, and that won't happen until I've gotten to the part that requires them, just so I'm not losing my train of thought, just so I'm not procrastinating too much on that. So, yes, the replacement wheels. So we have super glued extension actuator for the replacement undercarriage, as well as a very, very nicely moulded wheel. There, okay. There's some lovely detail in there that will look really nice with the panel wash. Nice big open backs. Replacement door that needs front undercarriage door that needs straighting out, as well as a moulded another replacement wheel with a more detail this time. Yeah, so these are the replacement undercarriage doors for the rear undercarriage, and that you can see light through them. They're that thin, so it's going to be very interesting teasing these off of their block. But the detailing's beautiful on those. an actual undercarriage bay for the front undercarriage to fit into. The other bay doors for the front undercarriage. Replacement wheel doors for the rear undercarriage. Again, much more subtle and thinner mould than the plastic, and more accurate as well. Another wheel and actuator for the rear undercarriage. These are going to be the ones that cause the most work, along with maybe the replacement bay for the air brakes. So these are to size wheel bays for the rear undercarriage, and they look absolutely breathtaking, bloody beautiful. But yeah, these require modification to the bottom panel, each of the top wing panels, and each half of the fuselage in order to fit properly. So these are going to be interesting and very time intensive, but I love them. Of all the aftermarket parts I've got, these are, yeah, because these add something the kit lacks. These make it more accurate, so yeah, these are probably my favourite part out of all of this lot so far. So pop that away, and then finally we have the crew boarding ladder, which I thought looked interesting. So make it into a little movable maquette or diorama set. So in here we have our pre-bent bars and parts, some of which probably need a bit of guidance to straighten out and sort out. Got handrails, little dolly wheels and other parts. And then of course, being a small metal kit, we have a delicious little set of photo etch. So that will hopefully look stupendous once put together, primed and painted, and I'll have to keep it nice and thin and keep the air flowing over it to make sure all that detailing and holding doesn't get filled up. So yeah, am I diving in the deep end? Am I biting off more than I can chew? Almost definitely, but that's how I felt when I started all of this. So yeah, we'll turn autofocus back on as a start for 10, and we'll have a look at the main instructions and the CMK instructions for the resin parts, and then we'll crack on with the build, guys. So here we are with the instructions. So it's a combined manual along with the Follen Nat, as it being a dual boxing. And again, really familiar layout. We've got our cockpit bucket assembly, and again, similar to the 172nd, we have the wheel affixed to the front of the front bulkhead. We have our guide foot to make sure that we put our nose weight in. No one likes a tail sitting kit. And the multi-part instructions for the ejector seats and individual parts there. So far so familiar. Be moulding with one pilot as we're doing a red arrow, and also training hawk. Yeah, all really familiar. So we get to step 14 and we have guides for removing the flaps with a scalpel, if you so choose. along with our instructions for constructing the canopy, putting the canopy in place. One more part for the air brake, whether it's open or closed, and the same multi-part approach as seen previously with the rear undercarriage. Really straightforward assembly. Our actuators, aerials, and then we come in here and we have the additional instructions for the flaps, adding parts for the undercarriage, and then the smoke tank, and that's it. It's all over in 1, 2, 3, 5 pages of instructions, one whole page dedicated to sticking the belly tank on. And we've got our one paint guide and our colour decal guide. Again with that fantastic red. The belly arrow, which I'll be paying a lot more attention to this time during painting and assembly. And the what makes this one different from previous, apart from the scale, is the 50th anniversary tail scheme, which is going to look pretty damn cool, I reckon. Before we go on to the aftermarket parts, we'll have a very quick look at the decals before I neglect them again. So we're missing the top half, which is from the just from the same kit but for the nat. So again, we have all of our white decals, and also Focus is making them look much worse. There we go. So RAF with that 50th anniversary tail decals. We've got our stencils dotted amongst everything else. Loads of nice big white bits. I'm being really confident with how good the white's going to look again. After my experience with the 172nd kit, it was a bit ropey putting them on initially because of how translucent they looked, but they dried and looked pretty damn good. Our cockpit stencils, our RAF roundels. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. It's another lovely cartograph set, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll keep those safe. And yeah, just to round up, we have our undercarriage set. So we've got parts that need modifying or removing are indicated with the hatching. So you can see there's a lot to take off, to take out. So cuts on the forward fork, cuts on the wing plank, on the stubs of the top parts of the wings, modifying the forward part of the nose to accommodate the BAE there, and instructions on how to sandwich everything in. So if we, yeah, modifying inside of the fuselage as well, and then we've got construction instructions for adding the additional parts to the undercarriage and replacing parts. How it all goes together. To yeah, add the undercarriage details, and then of course there's the external detail kit with our replacement tail, replacement flaps, air brake, and then the assembly guides. Loads of work, loads of modding, loads to look forward to trying. And on that note, I suppose I should crack on really. Okay, it's been a while for me since I did an update on this. I've not really had much modelling mojo recently, but we have made some progress with the Hawk. So hulls taped together, we've got the nacelle inlets on. So got a few parts of the CMK aftermarket ready to fit with our forward landing gear bay. That will be get puttied in and then finessed with some sandpaper if I don't roll over it with my office chair. These have been this stage has been taking up a lot of time, so we have actual sizable undercarriage bays that they can actually take the wheels in, but so to get these in you have to cut out the detail. I've also going to do the flaps posed, but to do that you have to cut off the originals. Those being cut off and then reamed. We've got one wing actually glued together, so to get the aftermarket bays in, you have to fill it out and sand down in here inside the wing. Fortunately, it's actually quite a substantial piece of plastic, but yeah, still a bit of work to do on this one. So if we marry up, and of course the kit itself, where it's a bit, good grief, older, yeah, still a bit of work to do there. The plastic itself is quite distorted, regardless of the aftermarket parts. I could have just glued it straight together and be done with it, but I'm a stubborn and awkward bugger, so here we are with a few bits down. So in this step here there's a small wedge piece. Watch as I pull out the wrong one. That I need to glue in. So this gets fixed in and seals up the trailing edge of the wing. Then we have aftermarket parts to go in the actuator slots rather than the stock parts, and then onto that will go the flaps, and there's also an additional part that will fit in the gap up here. But yeah, that's going to help actually inform the shape of the wing. Theoretically, I might have the wrong one here. With regards to the CMK kits, so let's just not throw this all over the place. The resin itself is quite easy to work with saw and file. So I've been using Stanley knife and either this blade or a small flexible blade. The flexible blade, so for example the wheels, is really handy for actually just pushing it down and moving it across, whereas this is more for actually if you try to use that to just saw into a block of material like here, it wouldn't work, whereas this is more suited for removing parts from their blocks. The finesse on the fit isn't all that great. If you do get the CMK kit, I do advise at the very least installing a temporary shim in the front to just keep the wheelbase back. So as you can see, one of them's crept forward. You can't really see the difference from underneath, I don't think. But yeah, it's just, so where that one's snuck forward a little bit, it's just made finessing the sanding to get this all glued together a little bit harder is all, because you've got to take more material from a little bit further forward. Sanding the plastic down until it's actually transparent, which was a bit hair raising. Just use one of my little recording lights to meter it. So yeah, not huge amounts of progress, but taking my time due to a little bit of a lack of mojo. and just because I really don't want to mess it. If I do mess this up, I want it to be a teachable event. But no, thus far it's been an awkward pain in the backside, but nothing, not impossible. Nothing's been insurmountable. Nothing that some clamps and some glue can't fix anyway thus far. I do, having these fitted, it is a nice difference, because that really did bother me that you just couldn't actually fit wheels in the wheelbase, whereas now actually looks the part. What else we got to do? So we need to take the tail off, and then we glue that together, finesse it so that the aftermarket tail can go in. Need to remove the air brake bin. Need to modify this to accept the modified undercarriage bays. Good grief, that's gonna try my patience. So yeah, basically removing this part and finessing here so it all fits together. But what else have I done? The cockpit, before I forget, has had, oh, that's not quite in focus, all of the details removed, either by scrubbing with a sanding block or a bit of scalpel work. So that's all ready to get primed and base coated. We'll fill in some of the gaps, so those should be solid, not spaced. Get some paint on this, and then I'll get the Kit's World cockpit decals glued in, and that will look lovely. And then we'll get our pilot painted up and get the control sticks in. But yeah, it's a lot of new stuff, and because I'm the awkward bugger I am, having 3 different aftermarket kits that all deal with different parts, I'm having to be very careful in checking and rechecking the instructions as I move around, which is why this is taped together, not glued together, just to make sure that I'm doing everything in the right order, just to make sure that I'm not preventing myself from doing something else further down the line. But thus far, it's been hard work, but it's been interesting so far. Right, so it's been a while. I've not had much mojo still for modelling. However, progress has been made. We've got the cockpit tub assembled, and the Kit's World 3D decals are in place. Let's just get that in focus. Not a lot of detail in there, bit of staining to bring out some of the detail on the cockpit sides. Yeah, some gaps to fill on the tops of the pilot seats. Everything else went together relatively nicely. So with the Kit's World decals, see if you can see there, there's a bit of overhang, but there seems to be just enough clearance and gap in the kit itself that it's not an issue. Doesn't fill me with confidence, but it should still all come together to look nice. And I have dry fitted the other half as well to make sure everything actually does come together. Yeah, just not as nice and neat as I was hoping. The decals, as you can see, are deforming a little. Still look good. I'm sure I'll be able to tweak it a bit. And we've also got the drop tank together, some sprue glue in there, and sanded that nice and smooth, and got all of the resin parts sanded and de-blocked Next thing to do is going to be to bring the fuselage halves together. So we've got the parts cut out so that the modified wing assembly will fit on properly. We're going to be fitting the resin wheel bay and resin air brake part, as well as the engine exhaust. Oh, gone forever. And the rudder. Might need to do small tweaking with this before the rudder will fit in properly. So yeah, some progress moving ahead, but it's yeah, not had much mojo. I'm not sure if it's modelling in general or just the fact that you know, the kit is okay. And as I said at the start, it's one of the older kits, but it's just not as driven as I was with the first 3 kits to get this done. But yeah, we'll carry on. We'll keep on learning. We'll keep on at it until it's done and see what we end up with. Right, so a bit more progress today. So got milli putt and some fishing weights worked into the nose. So the nose weight is supposed to be about 10 grams, but with the Checkmaster kit nose wheel bay, a lot of the space that would normally be hidden up above here was gone, so I've added additional weight underneath the cockpit. We've also got some more milli putt holding the bucket for the engine exhaust and the modified air brake bay in. So the next thing to do is have a damn good look at the instructions and then glue the 2 halves together. So where the new parts have gone in, there are some quite obvious gaps. So between sprue goo and model filler, I'll be massaging some into different cracks, crevices and crannies just to make sure that those gaps are clean. Get that sanded. Yeah, making some good progress today. Right, so we've made a delightful amount of progress actually. It's starting to look like an aircraft. So despite the extensive modifications, the wings have gone onto the chassis rather nicely. I just added a bit of sprue goo in there just to reinforce the joint, because the undercarriage bays have required quite a lot of modification, so you lose a lot of contact area there. The air brake tub, that's still quite loose. That's slightly worrying. We'll get some putty and sprue goo in where I can around there to reinforce that joint. The undercarriage bay has gone in, protrudes ever so slightly, so that'll be sanded. You can see, oh, maybe you can't, so there's quite a prominent seam line all the way around, unfortunately, but we did clamp it within an inch of its life, so it's not as bad as it could have been. So yeah, bit of filling, bit of sanding to be done in a few areas. Generally though, everything's married up beautifully. Quite a bit of heft with all that nose weight, so pressing my fingers where the undercarriage parts will be, it wants to face down, so that's reassuring. Of course the aftermarket exhaust bucket in place as well with some putty. Going to crack on with the rest of the assembly now. My only peeve, so if we get right up in there, you can see the decal, that lovely beautiful 3D decal is not quite sitting in there right. I was hoping that wasn't going to happen, but it looks like I'm not going to get my wish. I'm going to try getting some super glue in there and forcing it in place. Try a few different things to get the decal to just sit. Just to sit back in the recess. and stay there. Like that, actually. Alright, don't touch it, don't do anything, it's done. Yeah, that overhang that I said I was worried about, looks like it's come back to bite me in the backside, unfortunately. But no, despite this is the most optimistic and happy and hopeful I felt with the kit since I started it. Yeah, it's 20-year-old moulding, but now that it's starting to go together, you know, few gaps and lines to address, a little bit of some alignment issues here and there, but it's I was going to say it's starting to look a bit ship-shape, but no, we're starting to resemble something that goes up in the sky. So yeah, bit of filling, bit of sanding, crack on with the assembly, some rescribing to be done. Yeah. So it's been a really productive weekend. It's Monday evening now. I put sprue goo everywhere on this after getting everything in place because it needed it. Just going to show you where we are with this thing that actually is starting to look like an aircraft now rather than a few bits of plastic. So we've got the fuselage halves together. This seam isn't so bad, I'm just can't really even see it with the light. Okay, maybe you can, so I'm hoping just to give that a bit of attention with the sanding stick. Bit of sprue goo on here because that was a bit worse. Sprue goo along the front here, got the tailerons on, cockpits in, sprue goo down. The seam here was really quite heavily stepped. I managed to keep this in check with a clamp. We've got a bit more sprue goo just to help close that gap up a bit, so we're going to get this sanded and then rescribed. Going to sand along here and then rescribe the panel lines. I might do these a bit deeper than they have been, just so that they take panel wash well. Gooed in around the edges on the wheel bay and the air brake as well, and gooed in on the trailing edge of the tail and around the exhaust nacelle itself without filling it in, I hasten to add. I'm very proud of that. So yeah, a nice like 900, 1400 sanding stick just to slowly smooth these out. Bit of scribing, and then we'll take another look at it and we'll hopefully be in a position to progress the model. But yeah, some apps, bearing in mind all I really had was the cockpit, the tub and two fuselage halves and the wings. I suppose I did spend about a month slowly putting the wings together, but we've got something that looks like it's going to end up as an aircraft now rather than a few bits of plastic. So yeah, that's it. Let's get the sanding sticks out. Right, so just started looking at getting some more components installed, getting a few more things together now that I've done the sanding. So it's yeah, smoothed off the nose and the inside of the cockpit seam line here. It's now gone leading edge on the tail, and I've done my best to tidy up the underside as well, including the wings, the centre line. It's not looking that bad in the camera actually. Yeah, just rescribing bits, sanding, scribing, sanding, neating up things. I've just noticed an error. So look at the bay for the air brake. Tell me what I've done wrong. No? That's where the actuator goes, the piston. It's facing that way. So the air brake is supposed to go onto the part that way around, whereas the part should be oriented so it goes that way around. I fucked up. I also just swore in a video, but hey, we're gonna live with it. So I'm gonna bodge it and scarper as best I can. I'm gonna get the hand drill out and do my best with it. But yeah, every day is a school day. The idea of the projects is to learn, and I wasn't I was so fixated on getting the part in flush, square neatly, that I missed the orientation. So now that's 3 mistakes that I've made on this. The air brake bucket's the wrong way around, I missed out on the leading edge extensions, and I forgot the holes for the smoke tank. So I wonder what I'm going to get wrong next. Right, a bit more construction taken place, and we have something that's looking significantly more like a sleek and beautiful aircraft now. Flaps are glued on in position. I wasn't sure about the offset, so they're just because the interstitial slats don't go the full length of the trailing edge. Got our tail and everything sanded and sprue-glued in. That'll need re-gluing. Got our everything sanded in. We've got our undercarriage with the nose offset and the rudder slightly offset just for a bit of character. Undercarriage parts in. So next thing to do is I'm going to hopefully very carefully convince these bits of blue tack to come away. Without ripping the part I've glued in place off. Not as sturdy as I was hoping. But it's still in place, just need to get that bit off next. Nope, those need redoing. So the that one seems to be okay. Just need to get the rest of that out. So I need to redo one of the undercarriage doors, and there's a bit of blue tack here that doesn't want to come away, it seems. Yeah, that needs a bit more glue in there as well. But no, we're very nearly in a position to take this across to the spray booth. So I need to mask off the chairs and inside the cockpit tubs themselves. Bit of re-gluing to do, unfortunately. On the upside, I'm off for a Sunday lunch straight after this, so gives that time to set, and then we'll be giving everything a damn good priming. Yeah, not too shoddy. And yeah, everything's looking really good now. Yeah, prime it, see what imperfections there are that I need to work on. Bit of sanding, scribing, bit of putty here and there, and then back for a second coat of primer, and then remask it and get the red gear down. It's going to look really, really good, I think. Hey guys, it's been a while. I've not had much mojo recently, but before it did wear out, I got this far. So we've got undercarriage bay doors primed along with the parts of the undercarriage itself, and the majority of the model assembled and primed. So we've got always trusty sandwich bags and masking tape, keeping the cockpit clean, and just some Vallejo white primer with some flow improver and thinner, which has given us a nice even coat all over. Highlighted a few areas that need some work, so I'm gonna put some sprue glue up on the front of the cockpit here and just try and tidy that up again and smooth it off. Round the pisset tube isn't pristine, but it's good enough. A few lines need scribing. The vast majority of the primer, however, has gone down beautifully smooth. Just a few areas of excess from the glue that aren't quite up to scratch, a few bits to fill in here and there, but nothing major. So just a little scribing accident here. I might fill in some of these as well, but everything's on, everything's sturdy, everything's in place, and it's yeah, ready for red. I'll be doing a detail painting as before, and then masking off the undercarriage bays and things like that prior to proceeding with, and the undercarriage itself for proceeding with the red. It's quite a nice hefty model with that nose weight in as well, and I was quite pleased when it sat down properly after I got the undercarriage on. So yeah, just a teeny tiny bit of tidying up to do, a little bit of remodelling to do. I'm going to get these gaps around the lights filled in and sanded as carefully as I can as well, and I'll need to scrape the paint off of these and then use liquid mask on them, because I've got my candy coat gel colours to cover those up. Yeah, the priming isn't a problem. I'm going to assume that the red's going to go down absolutely beautifully again, just like on my first red arrow. It's the gloss layer, so we're pretty much there with the aftermarket parts. Everything's sanded and tidy and looking quite lovely, apart from the fact I got that bloody air brake backwards. But it just needs finishing now, which will hopefully be done before Easter, between work and other exciting things I've got on. Yeah, 99% of the way there. The rest of it's just adding colour to it. The gaps have all been filled in and look really good. So a few areas that I think will come out of notice once they're painted in. Yeah, just little bits of filler here and there, teeny tiny bit of sanding, another lick of primer, and we'll be ready to move on and finish the kit. Biggest pain in the backside is going to be getting the cockpit masked off, because I want to model it with the cockpit open, so that's going to be that's going to be touched up before I proceed and then masked off, or I could mask it off now and then touch it up after I've done the red. I'll work something out and let you know what I'm going to do. But yeah, the kit, the parts are all looking great. I'm going to leave it without a pilot this time. I think I'll leave concentrating on figure painting for when I do a little dio. I might practice on them, put them to one side to practice on at some point, but they won't be going in the kit this time. The kit will be sans pilot. And back on the table, so everything now is masked or blue tacked off, ready for our first coat of red paint. Only parts I need to cover up now is the silver on the air brake, my backwards air brake. Got sandwich bags and blue tack in the undercarriage bays. I noticed a few bits are missing, so we've got the aerials from underneath the fuselage fitted, as well as the top nav light, which has also been masked off using liquid mask. I've gone over everything again with another quick coat of white base coat primer. Fitted and masked off the forward part of the canopy, as well as masking off internally and externally on the rest of the cockpit canopy, giving that a lick of white paint. Reason for the white paint is I noticed in photos the trim of the cockpit is red with the white part, and that inside of the red is a white line, so I'm hoping with the inner part primed white that'll show through on the outside, most of which will be coated red with the inner parts black. The nav lights have been coated with a Vallejo silver paint, then the green and red for port and starboard gem coats from Games Workshop, and then a bit of hard coat gloss over those. Those will be getting masked off with the same liquid mask as the top nav light. Yeah, good to go. We've had a nice busy day, been pre-mixing some primer and some other colours. So I got my 20ml bottle of ready to go Red Arrow Red, along with some gloss black there. Yeah, been a busy day. Everything's taped up, masked off, blue tacked within an inch of its life. We've reprimed everything. Yeah, next step is to make it red, because as we all know, the red ones go faster. Right guys, so we are slowly but surely closing in on the end game on this kit. We've got some relatively okay coats of gloss down. I'm still getting that weird pebbly rough texture. I have played around a bit with some pressure settings. I might be able to save this with some of the later coats. We'll find out. But we've done a bit more final assembly. I've got the wheels to go on. We've got the front wheel on, currently being held in with some glue and blue tack. We've unmasked everything, so we've got that lovely burnt iron colour on the exhaust. Uncovered our top nav light. Got the front glued in. Our nav lights on the wings are uncovered. Certainly starting to look a lot more like an aircraft now. Really happy with how it's going, despite the unfortunate texture. I don't know if you can quite see it in light. So yeah, some parts still look nice and glossy, but then others have this weird roughness. But you know, as I said before, I'm still on learning projects. Got the undercarriage covers all painted up and glossed as well, along with some very shiny, I've just noticed, wheels for the back end. These are the resin replacement parts from the CMK kit. Canopy is looking quite lovely. It's going to look really nice once it's all stripped down and not stripped down, detaped, unmasked. That's the word I'm looking for. But yeah, next we've got the absolutely beautiful decal set that came with the kit. What looks to be a nice opaque set of whites for everything. The very distinctive, throw out for you. Very distinctive 50th anniversary tailplane decorations. All of our flashes. So what's encouraging here is that the underside arrow is all broken up for the undercarriage, but I remember these parts on the smaller kit were broken up by the actuators for the control surfaces, so we'll see how that goes. Which one am I doing? 94, 92. This is going to be... Oh, I need my reference images. I'm going to be doing this in as per a really nice memorial photo with the team signatures that I found online with the 50th anniversary tail decoration. And yeah, be getting these on next. So I'm going to be taking a knife to this, get everything cut up individually. I've got my wet palette without a sheet in, so they'll be soaking on there, along with a couple of brush pens with microsets and microsol ready to go to get that all applied. After that, it'll be another layer of gloss, pin washes for all of the recessed detail, blacks and greys, and one part that I keep on forgetting to mention, so T.1 Hawk access ladder. So this is a accessory kit with photo etch and molded metal parts. Just going to put that together using my slow dry, slow dry super glue, and this ammo ultra glue, holding bits together where necessary, just like on the tail, on the nose wheel, sorry, with a touch of blue tack whilst everything sets. But yeah, so far the main gripes I have is the terrible at getting this centered. So this control surface where I tried to get rid of some of the super glue, the debonder interfered with the primer, unfortunately. That stupid mistake I made with the air brake, putting the body part in 180 degrees out, because I was so focused on getting it nice and flush and set in there with the putty and everything that I wasn't paying attention to which way round it was, which was, yeah, just annoying. Looking at it now, I'm really happy with the work that I did getting the undercarriage bays recessed. Just could have spent a bit more time getting the alignment right, just so it was a little bit neater, a little bit more flush, but they do look really good. Really happy with those. But yeah, the resin flaps, the resin tail are all in and looking good. Gonna make things like the tail decal interesting, but that's enough talking about it. Let's crack on. Right, and that is the decal work done, believe it or not. As with most decal sheets, an awful lot of this went on relatively easily, relatively pain-free. As with the previous walk, finessing the decal around the actuators for the control surfaces, around parts of the aftermarket parts as well, was a bit more fiddly than I would have strictly liked. So yeah, one of the things I noticed as well is my two control surfaces, if I hold it flat, you can see one's a bit narrower than the other from the top down, indicating that they're at different angles to each other. So I've obviously wasn't paying that much attention when sorting out those. There's a little bit of bubbling from if I can get the light to play off it just right. I can't really see it. Yeah, a lot of finessing, a lot of bubbling due to poor surface work. My fault, not the kit's really. This one mainly due to the super glue remover taking off the primer and leaving some stuff that I really should have put some time into cleaning off. With the aftermarket parts, the only parts that really needed any real work were there's a lot of overhang on the undercarriage door covers for the decal there, but apart from that, everything's gone together, and as you can see, the lines all come together quite nicely. The hardest part for me was with the flaps down, making sure that I didn't let the decal drag off to carry on the line, because of course the flaps extend away from the wing, so you're looking for that parallel connection with the arrow decal. Yeah, it's just the one bugbear is that the decals some parts of the decal do come in pieces, like for the air brake. That was all divided up into individual parts, but for and you've got the separate parts on the wheel bay flaps. The undercarriage parts do have individual decals, but then why didn't they split the decal down to go around the actuators as well? Any other real snafu decal wise is on the tail. That's going to need a bit of a trim, bit more microset, microsol, and a bit of painting. Of course, where I had the control surface slightly off, you've had to finesse and cut the tail decal as well to make it all fit, but I think that actually looks really, really good. I'm quite happy with that. Working the decals as well, particularly the long ones, to get them to line up and join up. That was quite a lot of hard work, and finessing the decal reaching forward on the nose took a bit of work too, but overall some very, very nice work for a very, very nice finish on what's turning out to be a very, very nice kit. Anything to touch in really, where you've got the little blisters on top of the wing. Just need to touch in the roundels and a few bits and pieces on some of the white around the rest of the kit. Once that's done, it'll be back on with another layer of gloss, and then the pin washes. Going to try bringing the pressure up a bit on the gloss, up to 15 or 20, using I'm using a 5mm needle. See if that helps with the finish. But yeah, bit of brush work, and we'll see where we are. Alright everybody, so we are in the closing stages now. We have the decals down, we've touched everything in, we've got another layer of gloss on, and for the most part, it looks okay. It's not mirror smooth still yet, but it's better than it was, which is always reassuring. Maybe with a few more layers on top of everything else, the gloss will come through for us. Little bit of tidying up to do on the tail still, but I think I've done quite well there, touching it in with the brush paints. Yeah, so pin washes on the mould lines, a little bit more gloss, and then after that it'll just be a matter of touching in a few bits with satin or matte varnish, just to make things make a bit more sense. But we are looking the part. Apart from that, anything to do is attach the cockpit canopy. The oh yeah, got a little bit of the access trolley glued together, not fantastically well, using the Ammo Ultra Glue. I've got some cyanoacrylate as well. Once that's done, we'll give that a lick with some primer, straighten out some of the parts that have bent. But yeah, that'll hopefully, without throwing it on the floor, that'll hopefully look pretty swish and be solid once it's fully assembled. Alright, and here she is, done and dusted. Final layer of gloss on, little bit of enamel washing to bring out some of the details, and she's gorgeous. She's proved very popular in the Airfix group and on Twitter, which is always good, bit of social media engagement. Just gonna talk from the bottom and work away, talk our way up about the kit. So the kit itself, the 1/48 Airfix Hawk, it's an early noughties kit. It is starting to show its age now. It is basically a scaled up version of the 172 kit. Not necessarily a bad thing. There are a lot of good things about the kit. It's a really nice, quite accurate representation of the aircraft. It goes together really well. The basic kit, there's not much that you need to do. Standard Airfix foibles. Be careful with the undercarriage, and you'll need to do a bit of filling at the wing roots when you marry the wings up to the rest of the body. Despite the canopy coming in two separate parts, there is no option to model the canopy open in accordance with the instructions. So this has just been modified with a couple of bits of clear spruce, sanded down with a 90-degree angle, and glued in place with some 60-second set adhesive. And the default undercarriage bays, particularly underneath the wings itself, are very, very shallow, just like the 172 kit. They don't look right. They don't look like you'd be able to fit the wheels in, which is one of the reasons I went with the aftermarket expansion. So that's what's up with what's bad about the kit itself. With the finish, mistakes that I've made. So I finished this kit off after moving the study from the smaller of the two spare rooms to the larger, and it actually ended up spending about a third of the time building this kit following the 172nd kit instructions, which tells you how similar the two kits are. I didn't actually notice until I realised I was missing the two aerial fins underneath, which of course I remedied, and I also missed out a little nav light that lives on the front. Other mistakes though, I forgot the wing fences that normally go on the front of the leading edge of the wings. Yes, other mistakes. So haven't quite zeroed in this undercarriage bay. The other one's like nice and flush with the recessed detail on the wing itself, whereas where I attached this one, it's just not quite right. There's a little bit of overhang. Nothing major, just not quite perfect. Another mistake I made when using the aftermarket flap extensions. One flap is at a slightly different angle to the other. Partially due to me, partially due to the fact that it just wasn't securing on properly, so the centre actuators aren't actually attached to the flaps, just the two end ones. So I don't know if that's a sizing issue, if they were supposed to go in a particular sequence to size off properly, or I just need to use better adhesive. And I fit the aftermarket bucket recess for the air brake in backwards, so where the piston's supposed to secure is actually up in where it's angled. Little bit of time with a hobby drill gave me something to put the actual piston into. Just a stupid mistake because I was so focused on getting that flush and fit and in and sturdy with milliput. So yeah. Any other thing really for me, so I used with the canopy, with it being an older kit, I thought I'd have a go at using the glass coat gauzy agent, and it did help get rid of a lot of those little tiny cracks and faults that you tend to see in thicker, older clear parts. It has made a big difference, but I think it may have affected the adhesion of the mask as well as the primer and base coats that I've been using. So you can probably see there's a few parts where paint's gotten through the edge, and also where when I was unmasking, paint has peeled away just there. But for the most part it looks really good. As still learning, still getting to grips with these things, so taking it all in my stride. Could it be better? Yes. Am I thrilled with what I've got anyway? Absolutely. So those are my mistakes. So we're going to talk about the aftermarket parts next. So first parts that I really used were the aftermarket aftermarket decals from Scale Model World, just to give the cockpit something a little bit extra, a little bit special. And initially I wasn't all that thrilled with them. They didn't really pop. However, with the kit complete and everything together, they look absolutely terrific. Oh, that's another thing. So the clear sprue, the second pilot sight, wasn't fully formed, so I've only got one for the forward cockpit position. But yeah, the 3D decals, the 3D decals from the aftermarket kit, you can see the left and right armrest control parts and the display decals. They look really, really good, and with the model complete and wrapped around them, they just help add to the overall finish. So initially not particularly impressed with them, but now that everything's together, they just give it that little bit of finesse, and it just looks really, really good. Really happy with that. Pisset tube, yep, again, don't knock it. Once you've got it fitted, I had to glue that in about 1,000,000 times again because I am incredibly clumsy. But yeah, the aftermarket pisset tube went in absolutely fine. Control surface part, so another mistake I made with the control surfaces. So you can see the little red bit just here in amongst the white, that should be hollowed out. So you've got a little actuator at the top with a gap to move the flap up and down. I didn't do that. The instructions weren't particularly clear. But yeah, the wing control surfaces you could probably do without because the kit parts are perfectly serviceable. But if that scale accuracy is important to you, then absolutely go for it. And also the tail control surface, I have just slightly at an angle to correspond with the angle I've put on the forward landing gear. Just required me to get a bit creative and finesse the tail decal that's supplied with the kit, but I think it's gone rather splendidly, and yeah, looks quite nice. For the undercarriage and the air brake, just make sure you get that bit in the right way around. Oh, we've got the bucket as well, the aftermarket engine exhaust, so that comes with a little recess around the edge just like the real thing, and a bit more detail on the inside, and we've done that with Vallejo's burnt iron, and that looks absolutely glorious. Nice and easy to fit, just a little bit of sanding out to make the round recess for the original tailpiece a bit larger, bit of milli part, and it's held in there with that. The bays themselves came with very large bricks of resin attached and required a lot. So the wings and the bays and the fuselage halves required a lot of finessing and sanding until everything fit together, and the clamp hell that was holding all of this together. So the parts don't just fit. You have to sand the bays down until they're almost see-through. In fact, I sanded clean through the forward part of the round recess for the front undercarriage here, but it's covered up quite nicely with paint. Sanding the wings down so you can see light through them, the wing undercarriage bays down so you can see light through them, and just test fitting and test fitting and test fitting. It was a lot of work for a detail that's not really going to be visible with the kit on display. But having done it, I'm grateful for the experience, and I do really appreciate the look of having the deeper bays on the kit now. Yeah, a lot of work, but I like the final result. Your mileage may vary. Let's initially. So the kit itself, so out of the box, the kit is absolutely fine. It will go together and build you a lovely representation of the BAE Hawk T2 or T1. not a problem. Only thing is the undercarriage bays are very shallow on the original kit, just like I said with the 172nd, and the kit parts also come with the option to put the flaps down. You can also build it with undercarriage up or undercarriage down. Just there is no instruction option to have the canopy open. The kit itself, so yeah, goes together beautifully, just the usual foible with the wing roots that I've seen with all of my Airfix kits so far. All of the panel lines are nice and will give you just enough depth for your panel lines, so I use the Tamiya brown enamel panel line wash to put the details in on the main body of the aircraft. And yeah, not a lot of options, but there are some, and it is a nice kit to put together, and come together to give you something that will sit on your shelf and look absolutely fabulous for a very long time. Only gribble that I can think of really, apart from the undercarriage bays, is the engine nacelle, that the engine inlets are blanked off, whereas a lot of kits nowadays you have air ducting into a mock turbine. But yeah, the kit is fine. It's not great, it's not nothing special, it's not the latest and greatest. It's a 2002-2003 kit. It is showing its age, but it is still a perfectly serviceable kit at a good price that will give you a nice looking aircraft at the end, regardless of whether you use aftermarket parts or not. With the aftermarket parts, your mileage may vary, particularly the undercarriage bays. They will require a lot of finessing and a lot of work to get them integrated into the kit. Yeah, that's it, but we're going to take a closer look at the kit now. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy.